Greetings, everyone. Welcome to today's lesson. I would like to talk to you about the differences between hemp and marijuana. So what's the difference between hemp and pot, or hemp and marijuana? They have different qualities. People often use these terms interchangeably, but they couldn't be more wrong. So do you know the difference between the two? Please pause the video and take a few moments to think about them. All right, time's up. Hemp and marijuana both belong to the same species of plant, which is Cannabis sativa. I'm sure you've heard that scientific name quite often on several occasions, but besides of the spiritual, medical, recreational use of the drug, there are many more uses than that, and I would like to talk about some. Actually, surprisingly enough, even older than the plants from the Fertile Crescent, cannabis is believed to be one of the oldest domesticated crops. There are several reasons for that. The first was that there is scientific proof that shows that cannabis was cultivated quite extensively in what is now Taiwan, and later in the Asian China areas, where it later moved along the Silk Road and making its way to other parts of Europe and the West. Secondly, in the Asian region, these early cultivators realized that there were two different kinds of the plant. And even till today, this plant, Cannabis sativa, has both domesticated qualities and wild qualities, so to speak, or in its genome. Now, the first kind of use, our plant, we'll describe as Cannabis sativa, growing naturally as a strong, tall, and durable one. And the other one contained more flowers. Of course, the flowering one had all the medicinal, spiritual, and social aspects to it, especially when smoked or consumed. Now, over centuries of cultivation, the durable plant became what is now known as hemp. It's had quite an extensive list of uses too. And of course, the later medicinal plant became what is now known as cannabis, marijuana, or any other street name you can think of. Please feel free in our comment section to list all the street names, because I have honestly no idea. And so this interesting plant, one thing that you should know is that actual hemp, the hemp variety that grows both wildly and domesticatedly, contains little to absolutely zero THC, which means that you can't get high from smoking it. In fact, if my uncle said that he found a field of this stuff growing back in the World War II time, and he tried to pluck some of it and smoke it, and he got a massive headache. He was a kid and he didn't know any better. Marijuana plants themselves, though, can contain up to 20% THC, and that's just on average. Probably even more now with what I've been hearing about marijuana plants being grown for medicinal and recreational use, just for that quality of the plant. Until the 20th century, hemp plants were harvested for their strong fibers, which was used in a variety of goods, from shipping, rigging, and materials on boats, till textiles and fabrics. And at that time, 80% of the world's textiles and fabrics were made of hemp. This is before hemp started competing with cotton, which may be another group you'd want to check out. I'm sure that's an interesting group as well, but I will say for our hemp team that hemp is a lot less resource intensive to plant. It requires less fertilizer and nutrients and is less toxic for the environment. So good luck, cotton, beating that one. Of all the paper made in the world before 1883, 75 to 90% was hemp-based, according to Wikipedia. And this awesome book that I have assigned by the teacher, which I will show real quick. It's called Hemp by John McCain, What the World Needs Now. If you're interested in reading it, I recommend it. It's got its pros and cons, but it's a good source anyways. In addition, when European settlers first came to America, they were required to actually grow hemp. So there's an extensive history in the United States itself regarding hemp. Some of the states that had mandatory laws were Virginia, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and basically these laws stated that, hey, you grow hemp for the government, we need it for our Navy and all these other departments, and it's as good as cash. Actually, according to one law, in one time period, hemp was considered a legal tender in America up until the early 1800s, which is an interesting tidbit. And you could even pay your taxes with hemp. But because hemp and marijuana came from the same plant, there's a lot of confusion about that area, even for our philosophers and political scientists out there. They seem to get it mixed up when creating laws. The industrial cultivation of hemp was banned with the passing of this one law. And I believe it was the Controlled Substance Act of 1970. I think Richard Nixon passed it, which classified cannabis as actually a Schedule I drug. Very, very, very bad drug. I think narcotics are up there as well. However, American companies can still use hemp in their products, strangely enough, but they just weren't allowed to grow it. They had to import it from other countries, which was costing a lot of resources, drainage, from an economic standpoint. Anyways. But due to the prohibition of cannabis, companies import about 500 million worth of hemp into the U.S. every year, according to Wikipedia. And today, hemp is used to produce paper, of course, environmentally friendly plastic substitutes, fiber boards, clothing, and much more. In 2014, President Obama signed the Farm Bill, which clarified the legal difference between hemp and marijuana. So they finally understood that. Good for them. To pave the way for farmers to grow hemp, while pot did remain legal in most places. Cannabis plants containing under 0.3% of THC are legally defined now as hemp, thanks to that bill, which is an interesting fact. However, the medicinal part, the cannabis plants that contain more THC, are defined now as marijuana. So there's marijuana and hemp legal definitions on the books, finally, resolving that age-old debate. Actually, I think last year, if I remember correctly, there was another law that was passed in 2016, I believe, or early 2017. According to my notes, it said senators plan to reintroduce the Industrial Hemp Farming Act before Congress. And what that does is it would remove the Schedule I classification of hemp, making it allowing American farmers to actually grow it in most places. Yeah, well, thank you for listening to the differences between hemp and marijuana. Remember that hemp is one of the country's most vibrant crops and one of mankind's most vibrant crops, having a long history from several thousands of years. Have a great day. Thank you.